You, of course, were on the front line. Tell people who don't know what Breathtaking sought to achieve.
So it was really simple. We wanted to show the public what really unfolded behind the closed doors of our NHS hospitals during the pandemic. And the reason we wanted to do that was because it's almost 4 years down the line since the pandemic began, and it is so hard to remember what it was like then, let alone imagine what it was like for NHS staff when you really had no idea what those experiences were like. I look back now and I can hardly believe that all of a sudden we were working in a hospital and the air we were breathing was filled with a virus that could kill us. I had colleagues coming up to me asking me to witness signing their wills because they were so frightened of dying, and they were right to be frightened because sure enough we soon had members of staff in intensive care dying, and all of that I think has been to some extent forgotten. We like to move on from traumatic experiences.
Forgotten presumes it was fully appreciated at the time, because the period you're describing coincides with people like Daniel, now Lord Hannan, telling us that nobody was going to die, and Boris Johnson appearing on television to suggest that we just let it sort of run through the population like a dose of salt. So how key is that dichotomy between political discourse and lived experience on the wards?
It's incredibly important, and we use archive in the series precisely as a bridge between those two worlds. So what you, the public, were hearing and what we NHS staff were experiencing, and it was just horrifying, the mismatch between the two. So, we had to listen to Matt Hancock standing up and telling the nation that there were no problems with PPE when we were getting visors made by local school children and masks from local veterinary practices because literally we weren't getting them from the NHS. We had to listen to him saying he'd thrown a protective ring around care homes when we knew that care home residents had just been thrown to the wolves. And I think worst of all was this claim, and Boris Johnson loved to say this, another example of world-beating policies, that the NHS wasn't overwhelmed. We'd successfully protected the NHS. It was nonsense. It was absolutely horrific.
We can have a little listen to a small clip, actually, that I think makes some of the points that you've just made and demonstrates the sort of deployment of drama that you have.
We will make sure the NHS gets all the support it needs.
Morning. Just had a call from LAS. Might be the first one.
I'm not going to make it home this weekend, sorry. It's madness. There's currently no PPE at all.
They were overwhelmed. The virus is always going to be ahead.
Trust the guidelines.
This is insane.
Alvin, where's the defib? Where's the gas trolley?
The public can be assured that we have a clear plan.
There's no plan.
Members of our team are wearing bin bags and going home wondering if they're going to die in the night.
Don't go there.
We're already there. You know, this thing is spreading. They just keep coming. But no one is giving up. Prepare for the worst, but hope for the best.
Oh, I'm 9 o'clock tonight, ITV1. It's an appointment to watch, isn't it? Can we talk briefly, Rachel, about that? The difference between I could do 100 phone-ins. In fact, I did, and not have anything like the impact that a good drama can have. And of course, the book it's based on was not a story. It wasn't fiction. It wasn't a dramatisation. It didn't have a narrative arc in the sense that the TV programme needs to have. Why do you think that? I mean, I presume I can answer the first question, which is, does it bother you that drama has so much more impact than journalism or non-fiction writing, as you've done? And the answer will be no, of course it doesn't bother me. If it works, it works. But the second question is, why do you think that is? Why is that so much more powerful than me sitting here on the radio? Maybe every now and then someone will ring in who is in the eye of the storm and reaches the parts that normal journalism can't reach. But as with the Mr. Bates versus the Post Office, this is going to reach parts that no journalism has managed to reach.
I think it's because there is a world of difference between understanding the facts of a situation and then actually feeling them in a way that means you care about them, you engage. And strangely, I see this as a doctor as well as a writer. We're creatures of story. We make sense of our lives through the stories we tell ourselves. And sometimes, as a palliative care doctor, you can transform a patient's life by helping them see themselves not as somebody whose life is written off, they're going to die, but someone who still has meaning and the possibility of love and goodness in their life. And I think with this, when you see our lead character, Dr Abbey Henderson, named after my daughter, played by Joanne Froggatt, with all her frailty and vulnerability and strength and determination and flaws and strengths, going forward, walking towards the danger in her pitiful substandard PPE, it just wrenches your heart in a way that something academic or journalistic can't. And you care and your heart is moved by it. And that's what I want to happen most of all. I want people's hearts to be moved because we need to remember this. We cannot forget it. It would do our NHS a disservice and all the people who died as well.
I'm not sure I've ever heard anyone answer one of my questions quite so perfectly. Do you dare let yourself hope for even more? I mean, you've mentioned some politicians. They've already walked away. Johnson literally, Matt Hancock imminently, the list of senior Conservatives who presided over this debacle, who are staying in Parliament after the next election, whatever the voters decide, most of them are hitting the road of their own volition. Do you dare hope for consequences, either as a result of people being mobilised by watching this or by the continuing COVID inquiry?
Well, much as I have contempt for many of the individuals involved, and I think after his little stint eating testicles and I'm a Celebrity, there is no bound to my contempt for Matt Hancock in particular. I don't think those individuals are what really matters. Fundamentally, what matters is two things. One, how do we do things better and more safely next time? It's the patients who count. And two, and maybe this is fanciful, but I don't want to believe it is, how do we refuse to allow our politicians to tell us these debased narratives that play fast and loose with the truth at a time of global pandemic, the one time when the truth matters more than anything, and we have to trust our leaders. We have to listen to nonsense being spouted by these politicians on the airwaves. How is it that we have got to this debased state in our politics? I just want political leaders who tell the truth, and it shouldn't be outlandish to want that.
But not, especially not in these sort of circumstances. Thank you, Rachel. Actually, on that subject, I don't think this is something that you tackle in the drama. I mean, that's a sort of sanctions nonsense. The politicians claiming things are being done when they're not, claiming everything's okay when it isn't. You could almost make a propaganda-based case for it and say, well, you've got to keep people's peckers up and, you've got to keep calm and carry on.
Matt Hancock kept his pecker up.
Thank you very much, Rachel. I presume that doesn't feature in there.
Certainly not.
That's a relief. What about the absolutely crazy stuff? What about the people who will be texting me imminently to tell me there was no such thing as COVID?
Absolutely, and they'll be tweeting to me, calling for me to be hanged at Nuremberg. They do love their death threats, these people. So this is another really important point. At a time when our hospitals were overwhelmed with COVID patients, when we were rationing ventilators, we didn't even have enough ambulances, hospitals were nearly running out of oxygen, we simultaneously had people taking to social media, actually setting out to misinform and deceive the public, saying it's a scamdemic, COVID's not a real disease, hospitals are empty, actually the doctors are doing the killing, not the virus. And of course, something has gone radically wrong in our public discourse that these people can gain so much traction telling the public messages that are absolutely categorically wrong.
And deeply dangerous, deathly.
Deeply dangerous. And I think one of the lessons in that respect, perhaps for NHS England and the Department of Health, is the importance of candour. If you're not honest with the public, if you don't show the public what's really going on, then you've created a vacuum into which these guys can step in.